Hi, Paul Heinze and Phil Gafka back again for episode 3 in the other 5G revolution. Phil will bring us up to date and review what we've covered briefly so we can bring everything together on how 5 generations in the same time can effectively live, get along, manage, and succeed. Phil, welcome back, and I can hardly wait. Good to see you.
Good to see you, Paul. I can hardly believe you're having me back for a third time, but I thank you.
You bet.
Yes, we are going to talk about that other 5G revolution. And that's those 5 generations in today's workforce. And we've talked in our previous episodes about the differences and challenges. And today we're going to take it from a little different perspective and say, okay, now that we know about the differences, now we know about the challenges, what the heck do we do about it?
Right.
And the best way to bring these 5 generations into alignment and have them engaged. So regardless of whether in history we've had 2 generations working together, 3, 4, or now 5, I think there's 2 very foundational elements that need to be in place, and that's vision and culture.
Right.
And regardless of the age of an employee, regardless of the generation that they're part of, if you want them to engage with the organization and what they're doing, you need to be very clear on what it is that you're trying to accomplish, what it is you aspire to do, and what is the vision for the organization. And, you know, a lot of people put some things up on the wall that could be a little trite, could be a little trendy. I always recommend that clients go with something that they can stand up and say it like they own it because they do. You know, repeating something, I had a client that, you know, I asked him, what's your vision? And he said it. I said, okay, just stand up and say it like you own it. He said, I can't. I go, you're right. Let's create something that you can stand up and say it like you own it because you do. And that's what people are going to engage with in your organization. They want to know beyond the paycheck, what are they here for? What are they part of? So I can't stress enough that that vision for the organization is paramount to the success. The other side is the culture, the how you do what you do. And again, it's one of those things that you have to be very honest and very open about. And again, it can't be because it sounds good. It has to be that you're able to live this on a daily basis, because that's really what culture is. The culture is how you do what you do. And you've got, you know, people like Richard Branson who are very successful, and he treats, you know, he really doesn't worry about the external customer. He worries about his people. And his thought is, if I take care of my people the right way, if I treat them the way I'd like to be treated, they're going to take care of our customers the right way.
Yes.
But it's being very open and honest about what are those things that are near and dear to you. What are those things that are non-negotiable? And if somebody continues to violate your culture, that they just can't be there with you.
Right.
Those are some of the tougher conversations that, you know, I've had with clients over people that are part of their organization, because if you allow people to violate their culture, and that must be then okay, so then everybody else has an opportunity. Well, I'm just going to violate it my way.
Right.
Then pretty soon you have it like the old Burger King commercials, have it your way, and that's not the way to run an organization. So again, regardless of number of generations you're working with, vision and culture and clarity and living it day by day. The next part is, you know, getting people to engage with that and asking for that commitment. You know, it's one thing to state and say, you know, this is what we do, this is what we're all about, here's how we'll do it. And then where's the rest of the conversation? The rest of the conversation is, okay, we've put this up on the board, we've discussed it, we've talked about it. Are you willing to play along? Well, yeah, I could play along. Will you play along? Asking for that commitment versus just assuming that because somebody nodded their head that they're all in. And so some of the situations I've had with clients, we'll put this up on the big whiteboard and narrow it down and say, everybody, oh yeah, we're in. Okay, come up and sign your name. Come up here and commit, because we're going to take a picture of this. We're going to memorialize it. Come up here and commit that you are in and you are going to live and own what we have as a culture.
In the early stages of describing on the part of owner or owners, partners, he or she, president, owner, second generation, what are some of the early steps in content that you would begin bringing forward in a vision for the company? And do you do the vision in one sitting, or do you do it in a couple of series and then ask for them to step up and sign in on the vision?
Well, I've rarely had a situation where somebody's figured it out in one meeting.
Oh, right.
And if you're going to make it serious, if you're going to make it impactful, if you're going to make it big enough, most people don't think like this, and many times they haven't put a lot of homework into it.
Right.
So there's always another question to ask, and that question is it big enough? And it's usually somewhere between 3 and 5 meetings that I have with clients.
Ah,
They go, okay, now I got it. Now they've worked it through, they've let it percolate in their mind, and they've talked, to different people in the organization. It's like, okay, now we got it. This is what we're here for.
so the distinction between conveying the vision and changing the course of the ship is a lot different than a pep talk. Maybe the owner, after a good quarter or a bad quarter, gives a pep talk to the employee. This is different than that because it becomes a vision toward a culture. Is that accurate?
Yes, it's a 1-2 punch.
Okay.
One of the management gurus said, culture eats strategy for breakfast. And I truly believe that. You can have the best vision, you can have the best strategy and plan, but if your culture doesn't support it, you're never going to get there. And again, having your employees, having your teammates truly understand what that means to them at their level of the business. Someone lower down on the organizational chart also has to clearly understand what does that vision mean, because unless they do, they can't participate fully. They can't engage fully. So again, I also try to caution clients, the shorter the better. This is not the time to insult your high school English teacher and have a run-on sentence. This is a time to make it short, concise, and clear. Because the better you do that, the better people go, you know what? I get it, I like it, and I want to play. I want to be part of this.
Is it sensible to follow up the early stages of conveying vision with some written history of the company, some previous successes, failures, or other things? Or are you in the here and now, moving forward and not really looking back?
Well, I think sometimes history can be important if we're trying to avoid errors and mistakes that we've made. But, it's kind of like life, Paul. There's not much we can do about what we did yesterday.
Right.
But from here forward, we have a tremendous amount of control. And so I'm more of let's look forward and see, learn from the past. What do we know not to do again? But how are we going to do it moving forward from today? So history is a guide, but not as a limiter.
What would the oldest among us have the most success with the youngest among us in talking about the key elements of beginning to talk about vision? What do the generational gap? Do the younger people believe that dad or grandma or grandpa is lecturing them? Where is the motivational key here?
I think the key would be to ask, do you align with the vision? Do you like it? Do you think we need to change it? And if so, give me your thoughts on how you'd like to alter our vision. And, truly listen. If grandpa or grandma or mom or dad created that vision years and years ago, let's face it, how many industries are the same? We don't make buggy whips anymore.
That's right.
And so there has to at times be that reassessment of the business, because so many factors just influence and change it. But again, it's like when we talk about, listening to people and asking questions and, being respectful and asking for input. It's not just listening, it's also changing and implementing based upon those conversations. So again, it's, the old thought, well, we've always done it this way. Well, that doesn't quite hold water. Again,
Oh, have we heard that one?
exactly. Now it's more about, if you tell somebody, that they should know better, or that's just common sense, you're actually, judging those people and forcing them to, defend a position. What you're not trying to defend, you're trying to come together. And so you want that input, someone with a whole career ahead of them versus the bulk of their career behind them is going to have a different perspective. And if you want, as the older owner moving out, if you want that true sustainability and longevity for your business, you better be thinking about where it's going in the next phase or the next iteration. And so you have to be listening and hearing, what do those younger voices have to add?
In the subsequent generation, among the 3 or 4 sessions that you implement the vision content, from that period, does the second or third generation then communicate the vision to make the culture to the body politic of the employees, or is it done jointly among?
It's done by everyone. Culture is an all-in team sport.
Yes.
And I think you need to take it beyond accountability. Like Paul, you come to me and say, Phil, I saw you do this and it kind of violates our culture. That's you holding me accountable.
Mm-hmm.
I need to hold me accountable.
Mm-hmm.
You need to hold you accountable. That's ownership. And when you get to that level in an organization where I'm not looking over my shoulder, I'm looking myself straight in the eye, right in the mirror. And when nobody's looking, am I doing what I said I was going to do?
Right.
That's ownership. And that's everybody's responsibility, I believe, in an organization.
Doesn't it also embrace accountability from the standpoint of your word is your bond, a clear direction and understanding of where you, the owner, are going, so you're conveying it properly to the other generations and to employees? So this is a vetting of what you stand for, true?
Without a doubt.
Okay.
And it's not just what you say, but it's also what you do. And that's why those actions are more important than anything.
Presumably it's not in a dictatorial fashion, and I don't want to mislead the listeners in this. This is a conveyance of fact, truth, vision, some history, the ethics, the environment, and all sorts of things wrapped up over 3 or 5 different sessions. That's pretty much the story, right?
Exactly.
Now you take the vision. Tell us about the components of the culture. What will you convey in the culture?
The culture are those core values that bind and hold your people together. And it isn't that there is any one culture, it's figuring out the one culture that works for your organization. And it's been really interesting over the years to work with clients, and now deep discussions about different core values, because I try to get it down to a handful. I mean, I've worked with clients, we put 70 important things up on the whiteboard. Well, you can't say, okay, here's our 70, remember them all and play by all those rules.
Sure.
But when you boil it down to the most important things, it's not that some of those other items go off the list, they just get surpassed by a concept that holds more water.
Yes.
As an example, if you had a few things up on the board like trust and respect, and if I ask the group, okay, which is the most important of these two, trust or respect? Personally, I don't care. What I care about is how they're going to define it, because their definition is going to make one of those words rise above the other.
Mm-hmm.
And as long as they understand why that word rose above the other, as an example, If we trust one another, Paul, we're going to respect one another. The other side, if we respect one another, we're going to trust one another. Again, I don't care which way it goes, as long as everybody in the organization knows through that discussion how one of these got to be the more important of the two concepts. And when you can boil that down to a handful, 3 to 5, okay, if I say, here's our 3 to 5 things that come hell or high water, we're going to work our backsides off not to violate.
Yes.
I can remember 3 to 5. I can't remember 70. But again, we boiled it down to those most important things. And if we stay true to that, we're going to do really well staying true to our culture.
Measurement of progress. You've conveyed it. You've gone 3 to 5 sessions, and you're in place with not only succinctly bringing forth your vision, but now the culture and the interplay between the people. What are the metrics? How do you measure progress or do-overs, if there are any, and presumably there are likely to be? How do you measure progress?
Well, there's the tangible ways, your KPIs, your key performance indicators. You know, if sales are where they need to be, if projects are being completed on time, if you have, you know, your HR numbers, if you don't have a revolving door for people, you can just tell. I mean, it's funny. I can walk into a prospect and, you know, they'll give you the once around the park, and you can tell pretty much in 5 minutes or so.
Yes.
How things are going at this organization. You know, the boss walks by, do they bury their head and they're working at their desk?
Oh, yes.
Or
yes.
do they actually exchange with one another?
Yes.
And so you know, culture is something that's so evident in the way people deal with one another. So you're going to have the intangible side, like, you know what, this is really working. We're communicating better. We're talking about the topics that we need to talk about. We're getting through to the other side of conflict, which is resolution and results. And you start to see projects come in on time. You start to see harmony among the different people, among the different departments, and those key performance indicators, you start hitting those on a very consistent basis. And you don't have the revolving door, and you don't hear voices being raised. It's all of these things that go together that you start to understand that, you know what, this is working. And it's a lot more fun when it's working.
Good. In those situations, occasionally there would be this session, whether it's vision or it's culture, is construed as the opportunity for the mildly or significantly concerned employee about voicing objections, voicing things that I remember I came to you 3 years ago, or in cases of long established family businesses. I remember back when I started here 30 years ago, you promised. What do you do to take it away from progress, vision, success, goal setting, achieving, to a moaning session?
Well, I tend to go to reality. You know, when somebody was brought into an organization 30 years ago, I've heard this one that, well, you know, when I was hired, look, the job you were hired for doesn't even exist today. We don't have typewriters. We don't have switchboards. And so this is just the natural reality and evolution of an organization. And to say that, you know, well, here's what, you know, I was hired for. No, that job, again, does not exist. The job that we need you to do today is this job here. And let me define what that role and those responsibilities are.
Yes.
So that's that constant evolution of people, the industries, the jobs, but still holding true to the vision and the culture. That doesn't change. It's like, that's the goal. The goal doesn't change. The plan will change. You know, as Mike Tyson said, everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face. And that's like doing business.
That's right.
But I try to get people to fall in love with the goal, fall in love with the vision. Don't fall in love with the plan, because it is going to change.
What's the period of time after you've successfully implemented it and it's in place? When do you come back and assess from the people as well as the ownership how it's going? Do you do that?
definitely do that. And I've got, clients that we will meet quarterly and we'll do employee surveys because you can put some metrics to this. I use a tool called the engagement multiplier, and it is a very anonymous, totally anonymous survey where I think here's the cool part. You can respond back to the person that made a comment or gave you feedback without knowing who they are, with the purpose of trying to surface that conversation to take it further and get a resolution. But you can put metrics to the level of employee engagement. So when you talk about all these lovely things in our core values and this wonderful place we're going to get to in our vision, you can actually measure the progress of how well you're doing as an organization in total by having that survey where people can give you their honest feedback and give you numerical gradings to go, how well are we doing here?
Good. Excellent. How can our listeners get more information, get to know you, and drill down deeper and finding out more about this?
Well, I hope I've been able to express that I get a little bit of fun and joy out of doing this. And if you want to have just a little more interesting conversation, you can reach me via my cell, which is 847-212-4903, or reach out with an email to phil@leapcoaching.com. And I will love to have a conversation again, Paul, with you or any of your listeners. I love talking about this. Better yet, I love helping clients get their results and go down the road and become very successful.
As a footnote to this, to the listeners, in all of my years of working in our area of ownership transition and in some cases mergers and sales of businesses, a business that effectively follows the principles that Phil is talking about is not likely to have, but is in fact having a greater success for being more marketable, more attractive, and more successful in a merger. And certainly the team building that occurs at that point allows the owners to step back, perhaps retire early, perhaps take a senior position, and develops the middle management core of people that makes for a terribly attractive entity to merge with another company or to grow and diversify, reach out internationally, or whatever other good things that can happen to a company. I suggest you call Phil. No, thanks for spending these episodes with us. It's very interesting, and I really, really look forward to catching up maybe in the fall of this year and talking again and getting some more information.
Paul, thank you very much. I always enjoy